Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the 2020 Global Women in Technology Summit. I'm Hunter Muller, lead principal at HMG Strategy. My team and I are delighted to be here with you today. And I think we have a truly a world-class agenda, a summit that was pulled together by an exceptional panel of conference chairs of women that really are committed to excellence in our industry. The theme for today is the tide has shifted, women in tech driving the wave of change in the C-suite. Big shout out to our partner, Zoom. Today's powered by Zoom. Zoom brings teams together to get more done in a frictionless and secure video environment. Our easy, reliable, innovative, first unified communications platform provides voice, webinars, and chat across all devices and places. And I want to invite Mark Polanski to turn on his mic. Mark has been a great partner and friend for years at the HMG company, and certainly a co-creator in today's Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Hunter. This is an idea that literally started a very long time ago. And it wasn't until COVID did we really understand the power of digital communications and being able to have attendance and participants and panelists and speakers from all over the country. We enlisted 24 exceptional women to help guide and put this event together. The content is unbelievable. The entire spectrum of women in IT has been responsive and participative. And it showed in the end result, this is the highest subscribed HMG strategy webinar ever. And we're super proud, and thanks to all of our conference chairs and all of the participants, and thanks to all of the audience for being here. It's a great event.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark, again, for being such an integral part to the HMG team. A big shout out to our partners that possible, Darktrace, Zoom, Globant, Slack, and Softtech. We'll be hearing from each of them in either keynotes or on panels. And visit our marketplace. We heard a little bit about that here before, but our marketplace really connects you with our partners, our world-class partners, through our digital platform where you can learn more, read white papers, learn more about the interesting things that they're doing, and including setting up meetings. So we do a little poll, a little survey here to help us refine the marketplace. What are your organization's specific technology needs now? If you could simply and submit, that'd be great. And as I mentioned, at the end of the program today, we're going to run a little kind of feedback loop program around the 2020 top global technology executives who matter awards recognition program. And we're going to run a little video here, I think.
Later in today's program, HMG Strategy founder and CEO Hunter Muller will proudly recognize and honor global technology executives who matter. These top-tier CIOs, CISOs, and other technology executives have genuinely distinguished themselves in business transformation, digital disruption, innovation, and talent development through even the most difficult circumstances. These awards are not given lightly. They are earned. Recipients join an elite community of forward-thinking global technology executives in the HMG Strategy community. We are delighted to celebrate these exemplary leaders and their teams who have delivered unparalleled value to their organizations, their communities, and our world. Please stay with us for the award ceremony and meet the 2020 Global Technology Executives who matter.
Excellent. So hopefully you can stay right to the end. Hey, first up, we have a really great friend and a longtime supporter of HMG Strategy, Jerry Martin-Flickinger. Jerry, welcome to the program. My journey to leading Starbucks technology. Jerry, great to see you.
Great to see you again, Hunter. I wish I was there with you, but this is close.
You know, I wouldn't know what I would do any given morning if I didn't wake up to my Starbucks coffee. And that's true, really a true story. Jerry, what an amazing, innovative company that you find yourself at. Can you take us through your career and share us share with us with your passion for technology and how you ended up at Starbucks.
Oh, you bet. So many of you may know that I spent many years in the Silicon Valley, had a wonderful career in a lot of great companies like McAfee, Network Associates, VeriSign, and Adobe. And one day I got a call from Kevin Johnson at Starbucks, and they were looking to really accelerate their digital strategy. And he and I got to talking, and I thought, wow, Starbucks, what a different kind of company for me to work in. And yet, in so many ways, so much like many of the great tech companies I'd worked in. Starbucks, like your love of coffee, is all about that human connection over coffee, the coffee shop culture. And it's been nice to take technology and find ways for technology to just enhance that human connection. So it's been fun. It's been a completely different adventure for me and something that I've thoroughly enjoyed.
You've been in leadership positions through many different businesses and had an amazing career. What are the common threads in your leadership style?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because I would say no two companies are alike. And I think that's maybe one of the most important things to learn as a leader is that every time you walk into a new team, into a new culture, you've got to take a few minutes to just absorb it and listen to it and understand what makes it tick. And so I think there are a few things about leadership that go and permeate all of those experiences. One is really putting people at the center and spending time understanding the challenges. And sometimes those challenges are cultural, sometimes they're economic. But whatever the challenge is that the organization's facing, trying to immerse yourself in the middle of it. I do think as leaders, we all seek that next leadership challenge. And oftentimes when you move from one company to another or one position to another, what you're really seeking is a new, fresh experience. And I find myself every time I've taken on a new role, having to learn something very new or taking a skill that maybe I had started to develop and really going further. Maybe it's the skill of bringing teams together. Maybe it's learning business acumen. Maybe it's developing a multi-year vision and strategy. But whatever it is, make sure that every time you step into a new role, you step into it with great curiosity, that you recognize you're probably there to learn something new, and that you're not walking in with all the answers. And I think that's what keeps it fresh every single time.
Hey, Jerry, how important is storytelling as you move into the C-suite and work with boards?
Well, I kind of think of storytelling and communication as one of sort of the three secret powers you have to have in these kind of jobs. I was just a couple hours ago on a call with a person who recently got their first CIO job. And we were talking, and I reminded him of the power of the elevator pitch. And for me, the elevator pitch, saying it all in 1 to 3 minutes is the most powerful storytelling any of you can learn or any of our teams can learn. So every time I get a new leadership team or a new person in a leadership position, we do this sort of fun activity of let's go around the room and do our elevator pitch. And we literally set a timer. You've got 60 seconds and you have to talk about something that you're really excited about. And if you can conquer that, you will find that the ability to storytell and bring people along with you will be enhanced. So I think it's hugely important.
And talk to us a little bit about the future of STEM and students. What are you thinking about?
Education to me is kind of where it all starts. And through the years, and most especially in the last few years, I've really had a chance to spend some time with the newer students coming out of schools. One of the programs we have at Starbucks that is so special and dear to my heart is what we call an SCAP program, a Starbucks College Achievement Program. And we've done it in association with Arizona State University. If you are a Starbucks partner, which is what we call our employees, you can have a education free at ASU. And we put baristas, if you think about the number of baristas there are at Starbucks, we have like over 300,000 baristas. Every one of those baristas that works more than 20 hours a week can have a college education. So we have baristas who, for one reason or another, maybe never went to college, maybe they couldn't afford to do it, maybe they were just taking a pause in their life, who suddenly find themselves at a time in their life where they want to get that degree. And then they do. And we have been lucky enough to bring some of those baristas into intern programs into the technology organization. And they have successfully um, gotten positions inside technology. And so to see young people take a journey in life that maybe takes them away from education for a while, brings them back in, and then gives them a chance for a new level of career opportunity is so exciting. And just seeing those kinds of stories are incredibly powerful to me. So I think education's everything. And of course, it starts in secondary education and grade school education, but it will be the defining factor that will bring people together.
Jerry, hey, great to see you. And again, thanks so much for being part of the special program today.
Looking forward to the day.
Great. Thanks now. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Next up, we have Kelly Steckelberg. Kelly is the CFO for Zoom. I'm sure everyone knows and loves Zoom here. Partnering for performance, the keys to a successful CFO-CIO relationship. Hey, Kelly, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's what unusual times that we're living in, right? The last past 8 months. And I don't know how any of us would have gotten by without Zoom. So thank you so much to you and Eric and the team for doing an incredible job with your platform.
Of course. Thank you for letting us partner with you on this event.
You know, Kelly, when you think of the whole CFO-CIO relationship, why is that so important today and more than ever?
Yeah, so it's really important because think about how much of even a bigger role, given this pandemic, technology is playing in our lives every day. It's how we're keeping our businesses running, right? How we're keeping our employees safe, how we're keeping them effective. And our CIO, Harry, and I stay very closely aligned on that by checking in with each other all the time and debating what the needs are. And it is a really important relationship. I would say one of the most important relationships that we have at our executive level, for sure.
And when you connect with Harry, and Harry's a great fan and friend of HMG, how does the discussion go? Unpack it a little bit in terms of the storytelling and the back and forth, the rapport you built over the past couple of years.
So, I've known Harry now for a couple of years since he first came to Zoom. He was such an amazing addition to our team at that point. And so I got to know him a little bit through the interview process. And he and I have really worked on building that relationship. And kind of the circle of trust, if you will, between Harry and me is that we're never going to go into a meeting surprised, right? We're never going to get surprised in a meeting. So we will spend a lot of time together. We will debate things. We might not necessarily agree, but when we walk into something with the rest of the executive team to make a decision, we're pretty aligned on how that's going to go so that neither of us are surprised or pitted against each other in that environment. And I think that works really well because we do, the Speed of Trust is required reading for everybody at Zoom when you first start. So if you haven't read it, I highly encourage you to do so. And I think that's what allows Harry and I to, again, have these debates and these discussions, but come together ultimately for the best of Zoom, which is what we all really want.
And that's an HMG highly recommended book as well. It's Stephen Covey Jr., right?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Excellent. Hey, you've been managing through some incredible hyper growth. What are the challenges that you experienced in the past couple of years?
So I think the big thing for us has been, first of all, in the last 7 or 8 months, it's been making sure that our employees feel safe and supported. We had the benefit of living on this technology, so we've been able to we were able to send our employees home and keep them safe for a long time. But the challenge as the CFO that I'm facing is always thinking about how are we investing to support this growth and continue to grow top line and take market share, but thinking about short-term versus long-term needs. We've had this extreme acceleration over the last 6 months and wanting to make sure that we have the resources there. And so we've looked at like third-party resources to augment our staff, to keep our team, keep them balanced so they could also spend some time with their families while there's this incredible workload that has come to us. And then thinking about, okay, how do we balance out those short-term needs longer term by then hiring in employees? And it's worked well for us, wanting to make sure that we're committed to making the right investments, but we don't get overcommitted in certain areas as we're reacting to this tremendous growth in the short term.
Excellent. Culture really matters. And many of our CIOs in our community talk about the challenges of hiring people and then onboarding them and managing remotely. Any tips that you can share with the audience of best practices that you folks do regularly?
Yeah, so first of all, Zoom is an incredibly powerful way to interview people. You can learn a lot about a candidate via Zoom. And as a testament to that, we've hired about a third of our employees in the last 6 months. So a third of our employees have never stepped foot in our office and probably never met their manager in person. So the onboarding then, of course, becomes critical. How do you get them involved in the culture? How do you make them feel part of the team? And so a couple of things. We completely revamped our base camp, which is our first day onboarding experience, to be virtual. And then all of us as leaders and hiring managers have grown to be much more intentional about check-ins. Like when we talk to our team about what's working well and what isn't, what's harder in this remote environment, it's really the communication and the collaboration. And so, for example, I have skip levels with all levels in my team, and they might just be 15-minute check-ins, like, how you doing? These are the kind of conversations you would typically have when you're grabbing a coffee with someone or see them in the kitchen. But since we don't have the opportunity to do that, wanting to make sure that we're all checking in on a very regular basis. And I think you just have to be more thoughtful and intentional about it during this time.
So are they planned or are they actually spontaneous as well?
Mine are mostly planned, ensuring that I touch the team at all times. But the other thing is we highly leverage our chat as an internal communications tool. And what I've started to do is when I'm going to chat to somebody something, and if I see that they're not in another video at that time, I'll just call them. So that gives you the opportunity to see somebody face to face, even if it's for 2 minutes, right? It's much nicer than always just communicating with them via chat. And so trying to be better about that as well.
You know, the future of the workplace is really on us now. We're living it, right? What do you see in the future, and how can we accelerate getting there?
Yeah, so I don't think we're ever going back to the way that we worked before. You know, we hear from employees, they love the flexibility, and employers have seen this is a very effective way for their employees to be productive as well. I think the thing that we're thinking about at Zoom is, how do you keep the balance and the benefits that we've seen when all of us are working from home, right? Think about when we're all working from home, we have this democratization whereby all of our squares are the same size on the Zoom and everybody can communicate equally, as opposed to before when some employees were at home and some were in the building. Like, how does that feel, especially for those employees who are not in the room? And so we have some new technology, our smart gallery, which is going to really help with that and make it all feel like, for people that are not in the room, when we all start going back to work, that you feel like you're participating in the same way. And I think that's really important. I think that's one of probably the most important learnings that I've had during this time. And I think you're going to start to see more and more of that, you know, flexibility is going to be the hallmark of being an employer of choice in the future. And so figuring out how you support your employees equally, whether they're working outside the office or inside the office.
Well, you folks have a real interesting culture, and it's a real philosophy around loving your customers, right? And loving your clients, right? I mean, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so everything we do at Zoom is focused on delivering happiness to our customers and our employees. And every decision we make, we are challenged by our fearless leader, Eric, to think about it from either the customer's perspective or the employee's perspective. And it sounds so simple, but it really works. When you think about doing right for your customers, of course, who we're there to serve, and our employees who are also there to serve, it really helps crystallize and bring, you know, clarity to your decision-making process. And of course, it has to be balanced with what's best for the company. But usually if you're doing what's right for those two constituents, it will all work itself out. And it does.
You know, finally, Kelly, given that this is a global summit for women in technology, what are the key lessons learned or things that you'd want to share with the other global technology leaders that are on the call here today?
Yeah. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned through my career is that we all know a lot more than we think we do or give ourselves credit for. And my favorite example of this from my own career was in my last company. I kind of unexpectedly had the opportunity to become the CEO. And I remember when the sitting CEO told me, like, hey, on Monday, the board's going to offer you the CEO role. My first reaction, my first thought in my head was, I don't know how to be a CEO. And then I went away and I thought about it, and I realized that every single day I had thoughts about how I would lead the company or things that I would want to do at the company if I had the opportunity. And I did. And that sort of bolstered me a little bit and gave me the confidence to accept the role when it was offered. And it was an amazing experience for me. I was the CEO for 2.5 years and, was proud of what we accomplished during that time. And so I think it's just draw on your strengths. Think of all the experiences you've had when you're faced with a new challenge or a new opportunity. Remember everything you've learned along the way and how it's prepared you for being in that moment.
It really comes down to believing in yourself, right? And then going for it. True.
That's exactly right.
Kelly, great to have you on the program today. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much too for supporting HMG in this summit.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Bye.
Bye now. Hey, next up we have Sheila Jordan. Sheila's the CDO at Honeywell. Sheila, welcome to the program, Leading Courageously When Your Confidence Has Been Shaken.
Thanks, Hunter. Nice to see you, and nice to see all my colleagues on the call today.
Yes, take it away, Sheila.
Okay, so I have my panelists joined. Yes, I see them now, I believe. Okay, yes, hello. Okay, so let me give everyone the context of this conversation. So about 4 years ago, I was one of the founding members of Silicon Valley CIOs, women CIOs. And I hate to tell you this, but we started with like 8 or 9 of us. And the good news is we're at like 24, 25. Part of that process is we've created this entirely incredible network is when we do our check-ins, we share, what's going on in our lives. It's not just about all the good stuff, but what's going on from a personal or professional, well, one of each, one personal and one professional sharing that we want to share with the network and really, get their help and get their insights and get the more experienced CIOs and the ones that have done certain work before, how do we really share and really become super vulnerable? Well, fast forward 4 years and this group is, we really support each other, and it's been fascinating to be a part of that. But one of the things I learned is that, it's not always easy to be a CIO, and there are days that there are things that happen that make that particularly challenging, and just we wish at some points we had all these do-overs. So what I thought this conversation could be is about that. Like, how do we really think about things differently when things don't go as well as we want? When our confidence is shaken, when perhaps based upon something that's happened, whether new CEOs or new CFOs or new executives coming in, maybe trust is broken at some point. So anyway, that's the topic of today's conversation. So what I'd like to do is to open it up to the panels and begin asking those questions. I do though want to, before I do, I want to apologize for my casual attire today, but you'll be happy to know that I am in Charlotte. And I'm at a charity golf tournament for STEM. So I snuck off the golf course and joined this call today, but we really are trying to, of course, invest and improve our investment in STEM. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is to introduce our panel. We have Kirsten Davies as SVP and CISO for Estée Lauder. We have Jennifer Greenman, who's the CIO for Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Mamatha, for the CIO for Fiat, Chrysler Automobiles, and Marina Saint-Lary, who's the Chief Solutions Officer at Globit. Hello, ladies. Nice to see you.
Hey, Sheila.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so we're just going to go around. I have 3 really important questions, and I want you to spend some time thinking, of course, the answers and being as open and transparent and honest as you can for these questions. So the first one is, to be an effective leader, we must always find that right balance of confidence, curiosity, and humility, among other traits. So what strategies have you employed to successfully navigate these dynamics? Kirsten, let's start with you.
I knew you were going to start with me. Let's be vulnerable in front of 500 of our closest friends, shall we?
Yes.
Hey, everybody. It's so great to be here. And thanks, Hunter, for putting this on and for having me be a part of it. Look, I think this is such a great question. Being a chief information security officer, one of the things that they look at us to be is confident, right? The last thing you want is a CISO who walks in and goes, I think this is the right way to go. We're going to give it a shot, So I think that there's a really beautiful balance that does need to be struck. We do need to have that confidence in ourselves. I think one of the speakers earlier said that we're needing to have more confidence in ourselves than sometimes is naturally there, and take the risks. A risk-based approach is what I'm all about anyway. My career has probably been one of measured risks across the board, 4 different continents for me. I've probably taken a lot more risks than a lot of my colleagues have in the roles that I've taken. But I think that there does have to be that curiosity of what can be accomplished, what might be around the corner, connecting dots. And I think that gives us that extra something especially as women leaders, when we use our intuition, we use our curiosity, and we find that confidence in ourselves that is fueled by successes. And it's also fueled by failures too, that as we learn, we grow and we pivot and we become more curious and we become more confident, and also needing to remain empathetic, right? Which I think is more that humility piece. I don't know if I'm the right person to start that conversation off with, but I love the question, because I think that's the sweet spot of who we are as women leaders, is we have the ability to pivot through those different aspects of our personalities, of our characteristics, and of our behaviors, and be very successful as we do that.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That's fantastic. Jennifer, what have you done? What strategies have you employed to really successfully navigate those dynamics and characteristics?
Sure. Well, I would say for me, active listening is key. And of course, that is certainly all the more challenging now when we live in a world of, endless phone and video conferences. But, this continues to be, in my opinion, one of the most critical behaviors for a successful leader. I think as women, we are uniquely qualified to be exceptional listeners. But with that said, I have to constantly remind myself that I'm always learning. It's always about listening to learn. So whether that's a new technology concept or a business trend, or even just learning the personalities of my team, I need to be constantly learning. If I'm disengaged, I'm probably going to miss an important insight or concern. If I'm not learning, I might fall behind on, important knowledge that is important for myself, but also for my business and my industry. So I try to remain connected and engaged, and that is a challenge, again, in this environment that we're in right now. But I do try to remain engaged with my teams, with my business partners through regular touch points. I'm a big believer in one-on-ones, team meetings, stand-ups, huddles, scrums, whatever term you want to use, but for different opportunities for engagement. Also on a personal level, or I should say professional development level, I try to stay up to speed, utilizing different publications. If you ever see me out in the airport or, around my home, I'm usually with my earbuds in and I'm listening to an article, less frequently, but occasionally, good podcast or a good, audiobook, but really just trying to constantly learn. One final note I'll mention though, when it comes to being confident and for me, that it very much equates to being prepared. So I am diligent to the point of compulsivity when it comes to meeting prep. I want to make sure I'm ready, I'm prepared to engage in a meaningful and constructive conversation whenever possible. And it's not always possible, certainly in the environment we're in. There's a lot of ad hoc, last minute kind of conversations, but whenever I can, I try to be prepared, try to review correspondence materials, make sure I'm ready with the questions and the information I need to be able to engage in meaningful dialogue. But also for me, and this goes back to the humility point, to show respect to my colleagues, because their time is no less important than my own. So those are some of the strategies that I employ, to find that balance whenever I can as a leader.
Thank you so much. Marina, what about you?
Oh my goodness, everything that Jennifer said was right on. So hi, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And it is an honor to share the panel with you today. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Globant, but we are in the IT professional space, right? A place where we need to build more women leaders. So for example, as a company that, Globant has always, for us, it's super important. Gender diversity, having more and more leaders within the IT space and also within our company, it's super crucial, right? So thinking about being an effective leader, I'm all about being prepared, like Jennifer said, but I do think I myself, from time to time, like to go back to the details of what my team is doing, because I'm a big believer that as a leader, you have to live it, do it, to be able to innovate on top of that. Right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we're so much on a management, more on top, that we forgot what our teams are doing or what they're up to or what we're asking them to do. So sometimes I like to take some time and go work with the teams to see how they're actually doing it, because I think that that's when I'm on top and I'm asking them, to be better and to be more innovative and, just to add on top of that. The only way I can do that as an effective leader is actually being able to do it myself.
Yeah,
so I like
the details. Knowing the details.
Exactly. Knowing the details, because you're going to know what their burdens are, what their complications are. And that way, as a good leader, you're able to think strategies on how to help them, how to boost your team's productivity. So for me, I agree completely with everybody else. I am a prepare freak when it comes to being prepared for my meetings. And then also a couple of minutes I want to take on management of fear and expectations. Sometimes I feel as a leader, we have to be more empathy when it comes to the people that we lead, because sometimes you have to manage their fears and their expectation on what's next, right?
Especially now.
So I'd like to also take a minute to think about that a little bit, about how to handle that. Fear has its levels, it has its moments. So how do I do that to be an effective leader, especially my team? Because I always tell my team, I'm here to make you great. that is my purpose here. Try to get the best out of you. So
awesome.
just to add to the rest.
That's awesome. Mamatha, what about you? How do you think about the balance of confidence, curiosity, humility when driving massive change for your organization? How do you do it?
So I think, Sheila, for me, all three of these are very intertwined. And I think a few strategies that I've used in my career that have proven to be very effective, that I've been sharing this. So for a while I was with the auto industry, then I went to a utility company. So to understand even how this company works, I went with the meter readers. This is a utility company providing electricity to 10 million customers in Michigan. So I went with the meter readers to visit customer homes. I went with the line workers and then went in the bucket trucks as they were repairing their lines. And when I went and presented our digital transformation strategy, I could really tell stories about how it impacts our business at the grassroots level, at the ground level. I was able to share stories, back to that storytelling. And back to what Jerry mentioned, no two companies are alike. No best way to learn about the company than to be in the shoes of the people who are in the front line of the business. So when I went back to our board and I was presenting the digital transformation strategy for our company, I could share stories about these line workers. I could share stories about our customers. I could share stories about meter readers, how implementing smart grid impacts the meter readers, how it impacts our line workers, how it impacts, going to what Kirsten said, the privacy of our customers. Right. Giving them confidence that, hey, we're not really getting your data. We don't know when you're home, not home. We're not, no one will be able to hack this. So I've used the same strategy when I was the first CDO, the Chief Digital Officer of ZF, Friedrichshafen. I actually worked on the manufacturing floor for 2 weeks because there was a huge resistance in Southern Germany for our digital transformation to a software-centric company, because people were thinking we are mechanical engineering background. When we become a software company, my job will be gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so absolutely.
Being in their shoes helped me understand better, and then present with confidence what that transformation means to them. So that internal curiosity helped me develop a deep empathy for them and their roles. And then that in turn gave me the confidence and also kept me grounded.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. And just a general theme from all of you that is about knowing the details, understanding your teams, being there for your teams, but also understanding the business and getting deep into that and be able to, when you understand the business, you know that what we're recommending from a technology standpoint is going to support them and have a positive impact. So great answers. Thank you all so much. Okay, so now we're going to go a little deeper. So we're balancing a lot of things. We're balancing the new technology, financials, making sure that we have the right data strategy, making sure we have the right ERP strategy, technology, SD-WAN, infrastructure, you name it, we're balancing it. We're not going to get everything right all the time. So at some point, trust could be broken with your peers, with your team, with maybe the CEO. So how do you become more comfortable Like if that was the case and you have an example where trust was broken inadvertently and just miscommunication or whatever the reason is, but trust was broken, how do you address that? How do you become comfortable with it when you're most vulnerable? How do you recover? How do you get that trust back? I'm going to start with you, Jennifer.
So you mentioned one of the words, which is vulnerability. I think the other important trait to demonstrate in those situations is authenticity. And of course, it's always tailored to the nature of the circumstance that we're dealing with. But in my experience, when I or when a member of my team has failed to deliver on a commitment, I will always start by acknowledging the failure, apologizing, and taking accountability, regardless of fault. I find in the technology world, it's very common to shift responsibility. So to say, this vendor or this business unit, was somehow accountable, and very likely they were in many cases, but that approach, exactly, that approach is almost always perceived as our failure to take accountability for our customers' needs. So my approach is own the problem, regardless of fault, and more importantly, own accountability for the solution to that problem. And so on a personal level, sometimes that means, articulating my own deficiencies as a leader. And that's tough, right? It's tough to absorb sometimes, as it could compromise my own reputation. But, what I have found is in the long run, it almost always fuels trust and collaboration in a way that, no other approach can. And a final note, I'll say that, in these situations, probably goes without saying to anyone on this call, trust restoration, delivery of a solution needs to become the very top of my priority list when that happens. So whatever you like to do, I use Outlook for, sometimes my to-do list. Some people use sticky notes, some people use lists. It really doesn't matter what you do. Whenever I or my team have not delivered, when we have lost trust, that becomes my absolute top priority to restore that trust and to make sure that my customer is satisfied. Because once we've lost trust more than one time, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to recover
Get it back. Yeah, great answer. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Kirsten, what do you think? How do you build that trust when it's been broken?
I really love what Jennifer had to say. Look, there's a book that I read quite some time ago by a former Navy SEAL called Extreme Ownership. And it talks about that. And Jocko is he's amazing. He's an amazing human being. But he talks about really owning and being accountable for it. And as the leader, being accountable for the output of your team as well. And I practice that regularly too, that when we miss something, and we're going to miss, right? That's the reality. We can't be perfect. None of us are. And I think part of that is allowing ourselves the room to fail, and to fail fast and fail forward and fail cheaply whenever possible, but allowing ourselves that time to be okay with, I'm not going to get it 100% right. And that's tough. I mean, we didn't get to where we are without being, strong delivery people and being, high achievers and pursuers of excellence in so many different things. And so I think for me, it's taking that extreme ownership over the outcome to being the umbrella for my team. If it's something that my team did, I'm going to take it. I will take accountability for it. And if it's a success, I give the team credit for it. And so I think that that starts to build trust, because trust is this huge thing, which I could talk about for hours, but I won't. But trust is relational and has very little to do with delivery. And here's why I say that. You can knock a delivery out of the park and people still don't trust you. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's relational. And so I think that, it happens from time to time in your teams, happens from time to time with peers, happens from time to time, on the level up, that kind of a thing. I think it's that extreme ownership of accountability for the results. And it's also pivoting to really prioritize the relationship. And this is something I continue to have to work on. I really do, because I'm so accustomed to driving results that sometimes I go, oh yeah, sorry, I got to bring you on the journey, don't I? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Can we have a meeting? Can we grab a virtual coffee or a donut? And let's just talk about how you received what it was that I just did. And I'm so sorry if I ran over you or if I, steamrolled. That wasn't my intent.
Mm-hmm.
I think trust is one of those things where you have to be very intentional and you have to focus your intent on the building and the constant rebuilding of trust,
Right.
in my opinion.
Great answer. And I think both of you said, but I don't think you can over communicate during these situations either. You just can't fundamentally over communicate. Mamatha, what about you? How do you approach this when you feel at some point something's happened that trust might be broken? What have you done? What would you do?
What's one of the comments from the audience that said, trust is built in drops, but lost in buckets. I think that's a great quote. And I think what I kind of distilled my experience with relationships and trust and success into kind of a formula. Our professional net worth, like a personal net worth, your professional net worth is equal to your results to the exponent of your relationships. The higher you go, those relationships have an amplifying effect on the results that you deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And those relationships, that trust is the foundational element. And sometimes the higher you go, these relationships become very high stakes. It need not necessarily be a series of events that have led to losing trust. It could be just one event.
Mm-hmm.
Where the context is completely misconstrued between two people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you could do everything, you could communicate, continuously, apologize, do whatever you would, but sometimes when you lose that trust, you never rebuild a relationship. That's the example that I wanted to give, Sheila. In one case, I had two opportunities, both with two of the best colleagues I worked with one company, the other with another company. I didn't choose to go to a company with a previous CEO that I worked with. And to this day, the CEO chooses not to talk to me.
Mm.
Right? Because he felt like, well, he gave me an opportunity to come join him in one of the top 10 companies in the world. And then I did not. And then I chose to be with my family, move from Germany to Michigan. And then, so there was a priority that I had in my mind. I tried to explain it, but somehow we both.
Yeah, but I think though that to me is kind of misalignment. I mean, you all have just mentioned that to be a leader, an effective leader, it's authenticity. You got to be clear. You got to communicate. You got to make sure that you're articulating your vision and your plans and your desires. And it sounds like in that case, it was maybe just a misalignment, and that happens. And I think I really thank you for bringing up that point, because sometimes it's not recoverable. And you know what? You just got to kind of cut your losses at that point too, and decide this is the right thing to do for my life and my personal life at this moment. So gosh, I really appreciate you sharing that story. Marina.
Okay, what can I say that you ladies haven't already said? This was a hard one to go last. So just to add on top of what you all have said, sometimes when trust is broken for me, I like to take a minute to think as why the other person believes that trust is broken. And sometimes we don't do that simple exercise. We just jump on top of trying to get the trust back, or what went wrong, but we never take a minute just to think of why that person is breaking that trust. Mm-hmm. And I'm a very emotional person, so that makes me sometimes jump up top of things and don't calm down, take a minute, think about it. So I've had a couple of cases where trust had been broken. And I just took a minute as to think of what happened, why is that person not trusting me anymore, and try to put myself in their shoes to be able to understand how I can either work on building it again or work on, what's next on, just to recuperate what I am. So, I mean, and then the other part of your question, Sheila, which was how do you become more comfortable when you're most vulnerable? And and this is just my experience, I like to go back to what made me who I am today, right? Because you get more and more comfortable. When you're vulnerable, you lose all that. You lose all your effort. You lose all your history. You lose everything that you've done. So I like to just take a minute to
Get regrounded.
And get regrounded and think about everything I've achieved, everything I've done, you know, what made me come to this moment, right? And that really just helps me be more comfortable, especially when I'm very vulnerable. So just to add on top, because you all win me to it, all those great recommendations, but I wanted, you know, just to add these two.
No, I appreciate that. Okay, so we're kind of coming to the end of our time. I know I could talk about this for hours, but we have one more question that's really important and very meaty as well. But I am going to ask each of you to get to an answer 30 seconds or less. And I know this is super hard, but any tips and tricks? So what should you do, or what have you done when your confidence has been shaken? What are some tips and tricks? How do you recover? What are your recovery mechanisms? Like you just had a bad meeting, or some program or project didn't hit the schedule that you expected, and your confidence, you may have picked the wrong technology and recommended that to the company. Okay, your confidence is shaken. I'll start with you, Marina, because we went last time. What do you do?
So for me, I have to, and at least this is from my personal experience, and Jennifer touched on this, acknowledging the failure. And sometimes it's hard. So for me, just accepting that it went wrong, what went wrong, really just grounding that, because it's hard. Sometimes I don't even like to accept my failures, and we have to accept them to be able to work on them. And then some recovery mechanism for me is talking to colleagues that I admire, or people that I admire, and just getting their point of view, or because
Nice.
I feel, you know, just like colleagues just like tell me, you know, you're looking at it from a wrong angle. So, you know, people that I admire and I look up to, I love to talk to them after I have a failure, because I feel that just really just makes me reborn a little bit and just gives me that boost that I need. 30 seconds, okay. Sheila.
Absolutely fantastic. And we can argue forever and debate what's a failure. Just because we missed something, is that really a failure or not? But that's another topic for another event, Hunter. Mamatha, what do you want to do around? What do you do when your confidence has been shaken?
I think, Sheila, just a recent incident. I walked from a very tough meeting directly into a board presentation. Very tough meeting.
Right.
Without even a gap.
Right.
So there is no time to walk out to take a deep breath and come back to it. So I walked from a tough meeting to presenting to the board. So in that case, I was constantly telling myself, compartmentalize.
Yeah.
This is your presenting. There will be, you know, after this meeting, there will be time for you to look at the meeting that you just had, and to think about it, and to get around to the people and talk to them about it. But now focus. It's that intentionally telling yourself and boosting your own confidence, because when that is shaken, you are the only one that can rebuild your confidence. And there's no one else in the world that can do it for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's such great advice. It's almost like it's game time. You know, it's fourth quarter, it's game time. And the other thing I've learned is, like, nobody sees what's going on inside of you, you know? So you might feel all that, but you got to just show that in outer self. And like, you're right, just get through the next thing. And I love your advice on compartmentalizing and focus. Fantastic. Let's see, who's next? Jennifer, what do you do?
Yeah, so well, I often think back to a lesson that I learned when I was CIO at Mamatha Cancer Center, which is a really highly respected academic healthcare organization. And that organization, I was surrounded by, you know, many expert, you know, world-renowned experts on medicine. And here I was a brand new 34-year-old CIO who really had never had experience in an organization of that size and complexity before. And with that, plus the, you know, a lot of technical issues, a lot of very challenging political dynamics, I battled insecurity regularly in my first couple of years of my tenure there. So a trusted colleague once told me this, and I remember this to this day. She said, Jennifer, you have to remember that they are all just normal people who have deep expertise, deep knowledge in their specific domain. You are the expert in technology, and you have every right to deserve a seat at the table with them. This is the role you have earned. And so this is a lesson I remind myself anytime I battle insecurity or difficult situations, you know, is that I do have a right to be at the table. I have earned this, and I deserve to have my voice heard as loudly as anyone else.
Absolutely. Woo, love that. Okay, Kirsten, wrap us up.
After buying stock in a vineyard after a failure, I'm kidding. I mean, all seriousness though, I would be very remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to talk about my faith. And I am a woman of faith, and my grounding comes from knowing who I am. And it's been challenged many, many times. And so if I go back to trying to say, well, I'm the right person for the job, because I have like the fears too that come up as well, right? And we have those moments where we question ourselves. And so my grounding in the moment goes back to what is, my relationship with God being the source of my strength, and being the source of my purpose on this planet. And I will fail because we fail, we're not perfect, right? And yet when I need to pivot and when I need to get strength and get courage to face another battle, that's where I go. Honestly, I reset many more times than I care to admit, needing to reset, but I often need to reset. And that's how I do, Mamatha, how I can go from the same thing happened to me. I had to go back and be on camera. I went from a tough meeting to having to go back and do a full company-wide presentation. The people who knew the meeting that I went from, they're like, how did you do that? And it's like, you know what? I had to recenter and refocus on where my strength came from. What's my purpose for doing here? And now let me speak out of that place of confidence, not this shakenness inside, right? So I had to dig deep.
I can't thank you enough. Honestly, your authenticity, your vulnerability, sharing your stories. I hope the audience got as much out of this conversation as I did. This is a powerful audience, a powerful group, a panel, and I just can't thank you enough. So back to you, Hunter.
Sheila, best top 10 panel ever in 14 years. Great job, Sheila. Great job, Mamatha, Marina, Jennifer, and Kirsten. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. Hopefully you can stay to the end. Hey, next up, we have Cindy Finkelman. Cindy's the CIO at FactSet Research Systems, reimagining the business and leading and innovating in times of radical change. Cindy, take it away.
Hey, Hunter. How are you? That was a tough act to follow. That was an awesome panel. Thank you all for those nuggets. For those of you who I haven't met today, my name is Cindy Finkelman, and I am the CIO at FactSet Research Systems. And FactSet is a tech company that provides financial data and analytics to the investment management community. And we've been focused on driving digital capabilities for our clients for many years. So today, I was inspired, along with Rashmi, a fellow panelist here, to talk about, those women that have a seat at the table and really forge the right relationships that allow them to drive business innovation. And so I'd like to introduce all of our panelists by having each one of them state your name, your role in the company you're at, and just a very quick short sentence on why you were motivated to participate in this discussion today.
Hi, I'm Rashmi Kumar. I'm SVP and CIO at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and I'm really excited to be in this inaugural summit and to share my stories of digital transformation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy Pfeiffer, and I am the CIO at Nutanix, and also have a couple of board seats for Qualys and SATA systems. I wanted to participate because I believe that the more that we can represent who we are and how we're leading, the more that we can learn from each other and improve how we lead.
April?
Hi, I'm April Sandoval. I lead data and analytics at Slack, and I'm excited to participate in this panel to provide the perspective of companies that are born in the cloud and the journey cloud companies go on during this disruptive time.
Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Moore. I'm the SVP of Marketing at Softtech, and I am really thrilled to be here today. I've spent the past 25 years or so in technology, and I don't get to spend a lot of time with great women because there aren't that many women in technology. And I think, and I hope that's changing, but I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today to represent a woman in technology.
That's awesome. Thank you all. So Stephanie, maybe you could start us off with how has your business fared through the crisis and what changes do you see driving the business?
Sure, sure. So I work for SoftTech, which is an IT services company, a consulting company, and we've fared pretty well, primarily because companies need technology today to expand their channels or change their channels or improve their conduit to the customer. What's really interesting, though, about my organization, the marketing organization, is that we have had to dramatically change the way we market and sell to prospects and clients. And in our business, there is an awful lot of high touch interaction with prospects and clients because, as somebody said earlier, we're trying to build trust with our clients. And so right before the pandemic, we had actually done a 2-day design thinking workshop with an insurance client. And during 2 days of a workshop, you get to know all about the client's business and all about the client's families, and they get to know about yours, and you create this incredible trust and hopefully ultimately a great commercial relationship. Well, that has all gone away now. And so my organization has had to really flip and figure out how to connect to people in a digital way. And for B2B companies, I think this has been much more challenging. I think B2C companies have always been able to do this. That's how they do business. So that has really been a very interesting and, earth-shattering change to my marketing organization, but I bet a lot of others too.
Awesome. And April, what about you in this regard? How has your business fared at Slack?
Yeah, I want to talk about sort of our internal transition. Although Slack is a collaboration tool, we very much came into the office every day. Once COVID hit, we had to mobilize quickly to remote work, and we already had the digital footprint in place to do that. This is because Slack, again, is a collaboration tool, which has accelerated many companies through this time. We were less than 10 years old, and our company was born out of the cloud, which means we've chosen a lot of cloud-based technologies internally. We saw 3 stages to remote work within our global customers as well as within our own company. The first phase was to transition to our workforce effectively. The second stage was keeping our people productive and engaged. And the third was really to maintain relationships and innovation. Also, I wanted to inform the audience to look out for a poll question from Slack so we can hear your thoughts about adjusting to remote work. If I go a little bit deeper into the 3 different stages, transitioning was, we're moving to an entirely new normal, which means we had to communicate more effectively internally. We had to get laptops to people across the globe, logistically and through supply chains that were impacted by COVID. We offered stipends, we set up meeting guidelines, and we shared best practices for remote work based on even our own conversations with our customers. The second area was really about breaking down the silos within our company and really driving alignment. And we did that by enabling Slack to be that software of engagement, if you will. We brought in approvals in Slack. We can look up sales contacts easily, and we can also automate metrics so that everyone stays on top of what's happening on a daily basis. The last thing was really around, as this is a disruptive time, it is also a time for innovation, and it will allow us to emerge more resilient than before. And so focusing on innovation, we had to think differently about how we did work. So in the analytics space, we used to go into the office and we'd see numbers on monitors and we'd post pictures in the kitchen, and we had to think differently about that. So we went into Slack for that. We created workflows to really spotlight stories. I just heard Sheila Jordan's panel talk about storytelling and bringing data and stories and creating more of a FOMO effect, a fear of missing out, like, oh, I took this data point and I actioned in this way. And sharing a personal story on a certain role really helped others think about how they can use data and continue to build a data culture even while we're in a remote place.
Great, thank you. And Rashmi, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you are driving innovation and digital capabilities in your products. I know before you had spent a little time talking about that mandate that your CEO has given the entire company. Maybe you could share that with the group here.
Absolutely, and thanks a lot, Cindy. Look, I have worked for most of the time. I think this is the youngest company, 85-year-old. I've worked for companies which are more than 100 years old. And digital is panacea for companies which are not born digital, right? And they want to compete, they want to be what they see their competitors are, but it's really difficult to reimagine the difference. When I worked for a very old car company or for a healthcare company, it was fun, right? Bringing people together and make them think, how do you think about going from a physical product to a digital product? What does it really mean? Here at HPE, last year's Discover, Antonio got on the stage and he announced by 2022, we'll offer every product in our portfolio as a service. Great kind of North Star for us to go achieve as a company. However, it takes a lot of transformation behind the scene. We were already on a transformative journey till we split up from HPI and did a couple more spin mergers to be able to clean up our landscape and the foundation. And here we are now, we have to kind of leapfrog to the next generation of products and services that we will offer to our customer. What it takes is really finding those people who can really build that end state of view of what do we really want to offer, looking customer in from experience perspective, from product perspective, and then both enabling capabilities from converting a product from physical to digital, as well as all the back office function which spans across the organization. It was really exciting to be in IT at that time because we now need to develop all these enabling capabilities around subscription billing and convergent charging, which is not a big deal for a lot of companies, which has been there and started there. But for a company which was doing a product and attach a service, and here is how we do revenue, and here is how we do contract, to be able to transform in that way. And we have been on this journey almost for 8 months, 9 months now with our network set of products, which are the harder ones, right? We were selling access point, and now we will sell network consumption at your location, as well as working very closely. The good thing that happened is that we started a transformation office, which role was to kind of transform the company to this next digital piece. And IT was reporting to COO, who owned both. So we had early seat at the table, early view of what's coming from product and services perspective, and how we translate into the enabling capabilities, which will take us to the market in a way which will create the right partner, right customer experience. The other big part of role that IT and my leadership team played in it is drinking our own champagne first, right? How do we take those products that are being built and run it for our internal capabilities before we take out to leaders like you to say, you should be consuming this because this provides these type of capabilities. And we were our own worst critique, right? So every other day I'm sitting down with one of the leaders talking about what else do we need in this product, or why we think this set of capabilities should be done differently going forward. But the point that I want to make, and Cindy, where you started, was these kinds of transformation has to come as a mandate top down sometimes, right? To be able to take a 85-year-old, 90-year-old company to think very, very differently, not only from product perspective, but from our customers' perspective, from our internal staff, as well as day-to-day processes perspective around how do we transition to that next frontier that we need to be on.
You know, I love the distinction that you made between, you know, a technology first company and one that hasn't grown up like that. And, you know, the points you make about sort of the mandate, if you will, you know, could be applied to so many different types of organizations. Wendy, I'm curious on, you know, in your organization, Nutanix, how has product innovation driven the frictionless engagement that you have with your clients, right? And where are you on sort of that journey to monetize and realize benefits?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, I'm on the same path that Rashmi's been on. We are, wow. 2.5 years ago, we were a company that only recognized revenue from our hardware sales. A year ago, we transitioned to only recognize software revenue. And even more recently, we transitioned to being a subscription software company. And so, of course, you can imagine the heavy lift on the back end of all of those things for an IT department, like Rashmi was mentioning. But along the way, also like her, we have been, customer number one, the first customer drinking our own champagne, trying to figure out how we use our own products to enable those transitions and that digital transformation. And I think for us, the biggest transformation that enabled us during these times has been sort of the software-defined everything transformation, sort of building on that common hybrid cloud operating system to be able to do all of our previous services that we did with a very hardware focus in software-defined ways. And one of the biggest things for us was deploying for our core routing and switching a software-defined network. Now, maybe 3.5 months ago, one of our major data centers in Phoenix had a large outbreak of COVID, and my entire staff was affected, and a lot of other folks as well. And everyone had to go home and quarantine. And if you can imagine, coming from a couple of years before being a hardware company where we had to have our hands on everything, to being able to run these large-scale data centers and even cloud operations 100% remotely with a small team. It was this sort of infrastructure as code, software defined mantra that we had, and trying to sort of push the limits of our products that allowed us to keep doing that. And we missed our guys and happy that they came back. But in the meantime, there wasn't a blip in service. And for me as a long-term IT professional, this is an absolutely different mode of operation. It's a transformation in how we think about infrastructure, how we think about operational services, and ultimately that sort of model is needed for us to be operationally effective and cost effective with our subscription services, right? Those services can't be overpriced. They have to be competitive, and we have to continue to operate no matter what region we're in, no matter what operational challenges we encounter as well. So it's been a time of transformation no matter what in the company, with additional pressure and refinement happening due to this COVID crisis. And ultimately the model and the technology holds up, but more importantly, we're able to be people first. We're able to send people home who need to be home to take care of their families, and we still run. And of course, that's the magic I was hoping would happen when I got into this space long ago. This sort of mix of operational expertise and technical expertise that is IT. But it's great to see that playing out and to know that the model is not perfect, but it works, and it's ultimately an employee first, a productivity first model.
That's great to hear. Congratulations on not missing those beats. And welcome, Bhavani. Bhavani is the CIO at Ameren. Bhavani, let me ask you a question. You're in a different industry from the rest of the group, the energy industry. So I'm sure you have different challenges than the rest of this group is facing. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how the technology work has changed, especially as it relates to digital capabilities and innovation?
Yeah, sure. Great to be here, Cindy. And just listening to what Wendy and Rashmi spoke, even though we're in a different industry, I can, a lot of it resonates, right? So the energy industry is going through significant change, just, even pre-COVID, right? If I look at just the last 3-4 years, and then I look at the next 5 to 10 years, we'll probably change more in the next 5 to 10 years than you probably have in the last 100 years, And so the grid has stayed pretty much the same for a very long period of time compared to how fast things are changing as it relates to connected devices, going onto the grid, renewables, our customer expectations evolving. And so there's just, the industry is going through just absolutely significant change. I call it the change in, the decarbonization agenda that, obviously drives a lot of the renewables footprint. The decentralization, right? We were used to centralized generation of power versus how you actually have more decentralized power generation happening, distribution happening at the edge. You think about the other D, which is demand. Demand patterns are changing, EV, chargers, electric vehicles getting on the grid. And so there's just a lot changing with respect to demand. There's a lot changing on the grid. And, the biggest challenge for us is all of this gets operated through a very complex, transmission distribution system and the grid that has traditionally been very much, operational technology that's been very analog, right, has really shifted to digital and continues to. So our challenges, that we have from an industry perspective is one, evolving customer expectations. So meeting, our customers' energy needs, but really exceeding their expectations, providing the right products and services, the right digital customer experience. They want the same experience as they have when they go in and engage with Amazon, when they actually go in and want to check on their outage. They want to understand where, how their energy usage is, what their choices are. So there's just the evolving expectations and the digitization that goes hand in hand. And then there is the complexities of the grid, which is all of this OT equipment, our transformers and circuit breakers becoming connected assets. So IoT or the industrial IoT, right? So the data analytics, the automation, the smart grid, the SCADA piece of it, right? A lot of, how power gets restored today and will be in the future, very different from how we've traditionally done that, right? When there's an outage. So, I think that's the other piece of the digitization piece, huge focus for us. And then, as you have millions of connected assets going onto the grid, the communication infrastructure that you need to manage, the volume and velocity of data that you're getting from smart meters deployed across your customer base, the devices on the grid that need near-time control, right, for voltage flow, for voltage optimization. Those things just drive a different type of challenge and scale. So that's, a big focus area for us. And then, of course, what keeps me up is the cyber posture, right? When you talk about critical infrastructure, and you have the complexity that we have with the volume and velocity of grid data, but customer data and grid security. So, these are probably what's top of mind and key aspects of our transformation. And I'll tell you, the last 6 to 9 months have obviously changed and continue to evolve, if not accelerate our, what I call kind of the coworker, the employee posture, right, around digitization. It's around efficiency, productivity, giving them the anywhere, anytime, mobility aspects of it. And, even with, with the pandemic, we have 60% of our workforce that's working remotely, but we have 40% that's actually running our nuclear power plants, our energy centers, out in the field, doing our infrastructure build outs for the grid and restoring power. So, how do you keep them safe and, provide the right technology, right, is also a huge challenge. So I will say that the one of the good aspects of the pandemic for us is just the acceleration of adoption, right, has been fantastic, both for our coworkers, but also from our customers from that standpoint.
That's awesome to hear. The constant change of customer expectations, or as you so politely put it, evolving, right? And how customer expectations are evolving, and driving different business needs. I'm curious, each one of you talked about very different business models as not only just as really part of this crazy pandemic cycle we're in, but really just the business evolution. What is the one relationship that each of you values the most in your organization in terms of the partnership and the alignment required to have that seat at the table and to drive that different conversation and thinking. Rashmi, do you want to maybe take that first?
Yeah, it's a really, really important question, right? And one of the strategic behaviors that we have in our organization, we call it connect the dots, right? So the challenge with IT is, or to any technology organization is, we cannot work in our own silo, right? We are sometimes who are bringing all the silos together, right? And you run all your back office and finance. So CFO is your big stakeholder. COO is your biggest stakeholder because you keep the company's supply chain running, and marketing is big with you because you are the one which is giving technologies and data, which kind of keeps our customers connected with us going forward and all the time. So when you look at around the table, when you're in the CEO's executive committee and you look at each executive or the leader in the organization, there is nobody who can do any work until we did our job as technology leaders, as well as if we did not connect the dots across them, right? How many of you have had marketing released a new website, but did not tell customer support center and they got swamped with calls? It has happened to me a couple of times in my career of 30 years, right? So it's very hard to pick one, but I do see as you say, like COO and CFO are kind of the two priorities, right? One is how the company is running, how I'm getting the products, and kind of what our customer needs to them through the CEO's organization. So my SLAs personally are very strict around it. I kind of prioritize those systems, those applications which either are buying, building, or managing the supply chain to get the products through the system. CFO has dual type role. One is because of the work we do for them, but the second one is constantly justifying, because as a technology organization, we are always, if not second, the third most expensive operation in the organization, right? Which is very hard to do without, but at the same time, we flash up all the time. And it's the constant partnership with CFO. We are always having a very clear line of communications to not only say what we are spending and why we are spending, but what we will be spending or we should be spending to be able to keep the company on track and get our customers what they need. Both kind of COO and CFO relationship takes a lot of effort, but I always make sure that I have very strong leaders who are managing that relationship at every level to be able to give what they both need to be able to kind of keep us running and functioning smoothly in our organization.
Thank you. Stephanie, what about you?
It's a great question. I think there are a couple of folks that are really important to me at SoftTech, and one is our CEO, Blanca Trevino, who is a very dynamic woman who runs a company in a male-dominated industry. And it is so important for me to learn from her how she handles tough situations, but also it's for me to do my job, I need to know what she's thinking all the time. I need to understand her strategy. And I also have to inform her about what's happening in the market so that she can create a strategy that makes the most sense for us. And I think, during the pandemic was a perfect example where we saw customers kind of saying, the big thing people talked about was expediting product roadmaps. I have a big product roadmap, but all of a sudden I have no more time. So, going from 6 months to 6 weeks, how do you help clients do that? She could see that happening within our client base, and it was up to the marketing organization to kind of put that story out there so that we could help customers.
Awesome. Thank you. Wendy, thoughts?
Yeah, so I would normally have said our CEO. He just announced a couple of weeks ago he's stepping down, and I think that's something that we experience. You can invest time in those C-suite relationships, but ultimately those things change. I would say, other than that, They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And there's a couple of organizations that have been hardest on us in IT. We collect NPS scores on all of our interactions, and our customer support organization also does that with external customers. And so they have been detailed in their feedback. They hold us to a very high standard. As well, our customer success organization, the ones who enable our customers once they've purchased our product to use it successfully, they've been really, really hard on us as well. And so, ultimately, I've been learning from their customer-facing skill set and the tools and tricks and tips they use, but also just kind of seeing how they show up, seeing the humility that they have and the hunger for improvement. And ultimately, that's led to a lot of different groups internally: HR, facilities, the legal team, sales and sales enablement, engineering teams have reached out to us and said, we've literally had about a dozen groups reach out and say, could you run this operational process for us? It's not exactly technical, but could you run it for us anyway? Because we like how you transparently operate. And so ultimately, that's the sort of partnership we're hoping for. But it happened accidentally by sort of imitating the ones who were doing a good job at that.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I know we're out of time. I see Hunter has come to give us the proverbial hook. I would just encourage all of you out there to think about the relationships you have in the organization. And as the group here has talked about today, it's key to driving innovation in your business model and in your products and services. So give that some thought and be purposeful about those relationships. I want to thank everybody on this panel very much for your insights today. It was a pleasure joining you all.
Hey, Cindy, thank you so much. Great job. Ladies, April, Wendy, Bhavani, great to see you. Rashmi, Stephanie, awesome. Great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay. Hopefully you can stay tuned in. Hey, next up, we have Nicole Eagan. Nicole Eagan is the Chief Strategy and AI Officer at Darktrace. Securing the future of work, how cyber AI learns on the job. Nicole, great to see you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Hunter.
Great. Hey, this is really our inaugural event, Women in Technology. What's unique about the Darktrace culture for women?
I think if I look back, we started the company in 2013, and at the heart, we were really kind of a group of mathematicians who at its heart was trying to figure out how to get machines to learn a sense of self. But I think what's interesting about it is, given that kind of very mathematical approach, half of our founders, so we had 6 of us who founded the company, half were female. So I think that had a lot to do with kind of shaping the culture. If you fast forward now 7 years, we're up to 1,400 employees. And if I look across the executive leadership team, our CEO is a woman, our CFO is female, our chief marketing officer, myself as chief strategy and AI officer, 2 female board members, and 40% of our overall employee population are women. So I think it definitely shapes, I think, how we run the business. I think that the feedback, when we kind of talk to employees or do employee surveys, the types of things that we hear are that people feel that they're making a difference in the world. I think that's something that is very important to us. They also get the sense that it's a true meritocracy. They're very much, measured on the value of their contributions to the company. And I think very importantly, we get a lot of feedback that they feel like their opinions are heard, and we're always looking for ways that we can keep improving the business. Additionally, I think that we put in great mentorship programs for future leaders of the company. In fact, I just look across our organization now, and it's very interesting because not everyone had a technical degree who are now in fairly technical positions. So for example, we have a woman named Rosie Cooper
And Rosie's master's degree from Oxford University is in medieval history. And she came to us as a technical writer. And over the past 3 years or so, she has now been promoted and she's running our whole patent process and strategy. And we have numerous stories like that when I look across the business. And I think it's because we've done a good job, hopefully, with that culture of kind of mentoring the future kind of generation of women leaders in our company.
Awesome. You know, we take leadership and career ascent really seriously here at HMG Strategy, and you've obviously had a great career for decades. What kind of advice can you give other women from your own personal experience on how to accelerate their career?
Yeah, I definitely was very fortunate to have female mentors. So I think, you know, looking for who those female mentors can be in the organization is really important. Also joining some of the women organizations, you know, we participate in a lot of these different organizations. Things like, I think the first one I joined was WITI, Women in Technology, and I was in Silicon Valley, and it was just, there were so many wonderful women who would offer their time and mentorship. We actually support a lot of those nonprofits, both from making investments in them, but more importantly, probably having our employees, you know, spend time in those mentoring programs. I think that, you know, one of the things also, just for everyone, right, is always thinking about what are your weaknesses and how to make them stronger. But I think as we grew Darktrace, what I actually came to realize is that one of the strengths that women really have is the ability to multitask, right? And I think we're really good at it. And it's something that means we can juggle a lot of projects at once and get them all done. But as Darktrace started growing, there were so many different kind of competing ambitions we had in the company. There were so many priorities. And what I started to realize in myself anyway, is that maybe that skill of being a very great multitasker was actually turning into my weakness. And it really became much more about figuring out what were those few things that we needed to focus on as a company that would really move the needle. And so I guess that's one piece of advice now that I often, you know, give people who are, as you're growing these high growth companies, just how do you make sure that that strength of multitasking doesn't become that weakness, and that you kind of turn it around the other way and just really focus on those things that make a difference.
Thanks, Nicole. You know, Darktrace really is a world leader in cyber AI. We're facing truly a global cyber threat landscape. What are you learning from your clients out there right now, Nicole, and how are you helping them?
Well, I was listening to the panel just before, and there was, I think, comments that I heard from Wendy and Bhavani and others that there is such a time of accelerated change right now. So if you think about it, let's say there was a company that had 500 employees, and they all most of them used to sit together in a headquarters, and now they might be in 500 remote offices, right? And what that means is that infrastructure and the enterprise infrastructure is changing more rapidly than I've seen in the 30 years I've been in this industry. And what that means is as that technology changes, and we heard about some of those, you know, software-defined networks, and, you know, people aren't backhauling things through data centers anymore. They're going direct to cloud, and obviously the embracing of SaaS applications, and with that, the need to look at things like zero trust, and also just how do we give more visibility to companies, because now you've got all these remote workers or dynamic workers who are some days working at home, sometimes coming into the office. So I think what we've ended up doing is we're finding that in addition to the normal work we have to do around the evolving and rapidly changing threat landscape, we're having a lot of strategy sessions to understand how the infrastructures change and help technology leaders then think about what impact is that having on re-looking at enterprise security, looking at remote workforce security, getting that visibility, and the role that, you know, artificial intelligence can play. Because I think the IT professionals and security professionals are stretched more thin than ever And this change is happening so fast that you accidentally can end up with vulnerabilities from a cyber perspective. Now, you couple that, the backdrop we have right now with the election, we've got higher level of nation state activities than we've ever seen. And it's not all aimed solely at the election. And there's also collateral damage that accidentally happens even to companies who may not be the primary target. So it's really exciting times right now, Hunter.
Well, Nicole, just we're almost out of time, but a little bit about what's unique about the learning AI process that you have at Darktrace.
Yeah, I think what's quite unique, I alluded to it a little bit in the very beginning, is that we really started with this idea, could machine learning and AI actually learn a sense of self? Could machines learn self? And what we ended up finding out is that could very much be applied to cyber. So what we're actually doing is analyzing all of the data flows, wherever those might be, and we're using that to understand at a very granular level the patterns of life and the patterns of behavior of every employee and all of their devices and all of their data flows. And from that, we learn this sense of self. What that means is we can find attacks that are much more subtle, much more sophisticated, maybe even things like social engineering attacks, malicious insiders, that most of your other technologies simply can't find or miss, because it's no longer about understanding the latest attack or the attacker. It's about learning your own company and using that for defense. And the best analogy I have is it actually is based on the principles of the human body's own immune system. So, you know, even if something slips through all those great defenses, the ability to have a very precise and rapid response in an in-progress attack that keeps the company safe.
Hey, Nicole, thanks so much for coming on the program and being a supporting sponsor here and a national partner at HMG, helping us launch the marketplace. Really appreciate that. You can learn more about Darktrace at the marketplace, set up a meeting with Nicole, or reach out to Nicole directly.
Thanks, Hunter. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Bye now. Next up, we have Renee Arrington. Renee's going to talk about reflections on career-defining moments and stories of career ascent strategies with her amazing panel. Renee, welcome to the program.
Hunter, thank you. What a great conference and a great idea to bring women all over the world together. This has been fantastic so far. Well, we have an amazing panel today, and I'd like to ask, I hope that all of my wonderful panelists are with me. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be moderating this conversation. I'm eager to hear your stories, and I know that our participants are too. Just very briefly, as Hunter said, I'm Renee Arrington. I'm president and COO of Pearson Partners International. We're a retained executive search firm, and in the context of career ascent and leadership, I'm pleased to say that I have a front row seat to really observe career defining moments and career ascent strategies just in the client work we do. So this topic is of great interest to me, and it's an honor to have 4 wonderful women technology leaders to help share their stories. So very briefly, and then we'll jump right in, we have Robin Brown from Cargill. We have Leslie Ma from NSF. We have Susan Malich from Loyola and Andrew Wan from NASDAQ. Welcome, everybody. We will have about 25 minutes and there's a lot to cover. I'll try to leave time for questions at the end. So if you have a question, pop it in the chat box. And if we have an opportunity to address it, we will. But let's jump right in and start hearing stories from these amazing, amazing women. First question, and I'll ask the 3 or 4 questions we have and have each of you answer just to make sure we have the opportunity to hear everyone's story. But really, this is about career defining moments. So I'd love each of you to visualize or think about what was that moment for you in your careers? Was it a situation where you took the job and you thought, what have I done? I am over my head. I'm never going to be able to handle this. And then you figured it out. Or was it a situation where you thought the role was going to be a piece of cake and then something changed, like COVID? and it made it much more complex than you initially thought? Or was it a challenge, not necessarily of your qualifications, but maybe it was a cultural challenge? You had to adapt to a new culture that was new or different for you. So just think about those scenarios. And I'm just going to go left to right as I see you on my screen. And so Leslie, that means you are first. Welcome and help us understand your career defining moment.
Thank you. Thank you. There's so many, and it's hard to choose one, but if I had to, I would choose one where I was actually given a promotion into a infrastructure role. And prior to being in that area of business, I was in IT, but really business facing, solving business problems. And I jumped out of bed every day because I was so excited to go and make a difference in how the business enabled itself through IT and innovation, and how to marry business problems with IT solutions. And I got to visit all of the assembly plants at Ford Motor Company at the time to really understand how the business works. So I was really deep into the business and trying to understand how it worked and how it could be improved. And I really loved it. Then somebody had offered me a promotion into an infrastructure role, which would be completely not what I thought my career would go, and in the direction that my career would go. And I said, well, I'll be sort of relegated to the back office, to the dark rooms where, I wouldn't know what was happening on the business side, and how could I innovate and do exciting things in that role. But I'll tell you, it was the best move I had ever made, because I got a chance to see a side of the business where it was so impactful to how the business would run, and in itself had a lot of room for innovation. So I was able to take a lot of the solutions that I had worked on in the business and figure out a way that I could improve operations in the business, and make it really relevant to the people that worked in that group, to my team, and really tie business results to what they were working on every day, so that they could have this relationship with how they were contributing to the business. And so I think that it caused me to realize that at that moment that all of us want to have a purpose in our role and to see that purpose come to life. And so sometimes when you're a little bit further removed from the business, it's our job as leaders to make sure that everyone can see how they contribute to the goals of the organization and see the products of their work in action. So that to me was a career defining moment for me, something that came out of the blue and I learned a lot from.
I'm just curious about that, Leslie, just as a quick follow-up. Was the person did you ever get a conversation with the person who offered you that role and maybe had the chance to say, why me? I'm just curious if you did.
I did, and she was brilliant, because she saw that it would round in terms of my capabilities, and I think that totally the right thing to do, and it was really, really great career advice from a mentor of mine. So
good. Well, Leslie, thank you. I'm going to move on now to Susan. Hello, Susan. Tell us about what you would consider your career, one of your career defining moments.
Absolutely. Like Leslie, I can think of at least 3 or 4 that are really pivotal, but I'm going to go back to kind of an early part of my career to share something that really influenced how I moved forward. And similar to what Jerry mentioned in the opening session, the idea of embracing lifelong learning is part of most all of the career defining moments that I've had. So my first job right out of college was working on a project team at Southwestern Bell Telephone, doing Unix system administration and C programming for application that tracked all the copper pairs for the telephone company back in the day. I actually thought I had majored in the wrong thing, because I just wasn't, like, I was getting up and going to work every day doing, and I thought there has to be more to this. So Southwestern Bell was a very large company. They had their own technology training center internally. They did a lot of work on Unix platforms back in the day, so they taught Unix system administration, C programming courses internal to the company. A position opened up in that group, and I went to my boss and I asked for a transfer to be considered for that role. And his advice to me was, Susan, I really don't think you should go. That's not a very good career move for you. And I understood why he advised that at the time, but I went back and I said, I really appreciate it, but I really do want to go. And so he let me go. I moved to the Technology Training Center. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that was that I wasn't very experienced at presenting in front of groups. And I thought, well, if I could go to the Technology Training Center, I'd be in front of people every day, teaching something that I know that I'm interested in, and I'd get to meet all different kinds of people across the company who are using this technology for other things. And I'd like to learn about that. And that's exactly what happened. I loved it. I met so many people. I was good at it. 2 years later, my boss came back and promoted me out of the organization and into a management role. So it all ended up working out for everyone. But it gave me the exposure. It gave me some confidence. It was challenging. It was a little bit stressful because it was something I was uncomfortable doing right from the beginning. But I knew that it would help me grow and force me to do something new. So I would cite that as kind of the beginning of a number of opportunities in my career where I've been asked to do, as you said, how in the world am I going to do this? Those are really exhilarating, a bit stressful, but the enormous opportunities that we have to grow.
Yeah, but I think what I heard there too, Susan, is you trusted your gut, right? Even after the person said to you, you may want to rethink this. You trusted your gut and said, I think this would be good for me. And it proved out. So well done you for having that trust in your own instinct about your career. I want to move on next now to Angie from NASDAQ. Hello, Angie. Tell us, as you think back on a career defining moment, what one might be for you.
Thanks, Renee. It's an honor to share my experience, but let me mention a little bit of the history. So I'm a Senior Vice President of Technology in NASDAQ, and I've been with eBay, PayPal, American Express, all different tech companies. And it's really hard to pick like which one is. And I thought there's a unique one. I'm hoping to share this experience for all of you. That's, I got a computer science degree undergraduate and sort of really narrowed and have done a lot of transformative technology changes. However, I definitely felt stuck in where I was going, even though I've been working with all those greatest companies in the world. And, I was a mother of two and juggling between handling product issue and technology stuff and the little two kids. So, and I want to share this story. This is probably over 10 years ago. And if there's a famous person of mindfulness expert in industry, and his name is George Mumford. And at the time I was at eBay. So George was invited to be a speaker at eBay to talk about this mindfulness methodology. So I went there, attended. And as you know, George Mumford is actually the coach for Phil Jackson. If you don't know Phil Jackson is actually coach for Michael Jackson. So, many of the, amazing athletes. So I went to listen to his talk, and it's pretty amazing. I was like really excited. How does the mindfulness really apply to me? Which in that time I felt I was Asian, English, my second language, technical women in that, very men-dominated environment. Even though I was doing well, but I felt it was a mother of two. It's really hard. I felt like my full potential was not being maximized. So I asked him a question. I said, hey, George, And, here's my situation. I'm a woman, I'm in tech, I'm minority, working in a tech company. What are the advice you can give to me? And George said, you know what? I actually have no idea how can I help you? And he said, but I know somebody who can. So his mentor actually came together with him in that trip to California. Her name is Judy Lane, who's actually a professional coach. And after the session, and Judy connected with me. And Judy has been nothing but amazing, life-changing moment for me. And she taught me how to believe in myself. And she thinks I am sitting on the giant's shoulder, can do so many things, really unleash tons of potential. So Judy becomes my lifetime friend and coach. And I took all different roles, take a lot of risk. And currently I actually work in New York. So I went from eBay, PayPal, and to American Express. A lot of people reach out to me, why can you help me to transform American Express and come to NASDAQ? So I wanted to say that my experience is amazing, have somebody outside my area to really spot the potential and really encourage me. And I can talk more question about that particular moment, how to help me throughout my life journey to be where I am now.
Oh, I think that's a very important comment, Angie, because with so many of us, our work can become our life journey, and that's not necessarily the healthiest balance ever. So it's nice to have that outside influence or coach or mentor kind of guiding us along the way. I definitely want to come back to that, but let's move to Robin. Hello, Robin. Love to hear about your current role at Cargill, or what you might consider a career defining moment for you.
Thank you, Renee. So for my career defining moment, I go back to really early in my career. And I, at the time, was working at Best Buy World Headquarters, and I was their senior web art director. And I had a graphic design major as my degree, and I had put myself through lots of nighttime classes afterwards to do web development, web programming. So when they brought me into Best Buy, it was specifically to redesign their intranet and give them their very first portal. So oftentimes I had to go down to the IT department 4 to 5 times a day, begging them to run my CRS jobs, which is a content replicating system job. It could have been batch jobs, move my code every day. And it got to be kind of a running joke. Hey, if you just give me access, I'll do it myself. I don't have to bug you guys in IT. And of course, they would never give me access, right? And one particular day, one of my good friends that would run my CRS jobs every day said, hey, you're down here all the time. You realize you're doing IT work. And I kind of rolled my eyes and I laughed it off. And he goes, no, really, our boss wants to meet you here in a couple of minutes. And thought he was joking. And sure enough, the leader of that organization came around the corner and said, hey, Robin, let's go talk. And so I had this just panic look on my face of what did I do wrong and what's he going to speak to me about? And so the short of it is we sat down and he said, hey, Robin, I know you don't have an IT background, but I see something in you. I see leadership qualities that I think if you came to my team and changed over to IT, I think you could do some really amazing things. And that panic moment in me went, why me? I'm pregnant with twins right now. I don't have an IT degree. I would be the single female in IT, which, I was looking through all the reasons why not, instead of why I deserved a seat at that table. And at that point in time, he said, you'll be an IT project manager. Let's have you start Monday. And that's how I switched over into IT. And boy, did they give me heck for probably a good year and a half and challenged me every step of the way. I had to work harder than all of the guys on the team just to prove myself. But within a year and a half, that leader moved on and I became the leader of that infrastructure team. And over the course of, every year, they kept giving me more responsibilities. And eventually I look back now and becoming a CIO at a couple of different companies, you look back and the career path changed. And what I realized is it's okay to change your path along the way and be okay with opening those doors or allowing someone else to open those doors and recognize them through your mentors, through your sponsors. And that's how you have a potentially different career plan and can make a big difference. So that is what I define as my pivot moment in my career, Renee.
Well, I think that's a great story. And it's so interesting what you said. You had to take a step back and ask yourself, why do I deserve a seat at this table? I think often as women, we ask ourselves those questions as opposed to just assuming that we do, right? So perhaps that's a lesson that all of us can learn from you, Robin, on that you earned your spot and you got in there, and now look at you. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
Leslie, I want to go back to you and kind of reflect for me on, you talked about one moment, and I know there were others. What have you learned from your career defining moments over the years? One or two lessons that they've really taught you?
Well, I think you mentioned it before, which is really keep learning. And I feel like if you can find your purpose that really energizes you, and you can see your role and a vision for yourself and what you can achieve, then you know, I think you can go a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. I recently left automotive after spending 20 years in that industry. So leaving behind that deep knowledge and going into a nonprofit, which is focused on you know, protecting human health and safety, is completely different. And I think you know, we all get opportunities presented perhaps that you didn't envision, and you have to think about it. Is it the right time in your career to make a move and to take a risk and achieve something different? And if you keep learning and want to expand your horizons and have that learning mindset, I think then it just keeps you very motivated and moving in the direction that you choose to move.
No, I think that's good. And we all always have to keep learning. Just to mix it up a bit in terms of our order, Angie, I'll come next to you, and you talked a bit about your journey. What have some of those defining moments taught you about yourself?
I almost feel like very similar to what Leslie and Susan is saying, is that, you know, I probably would say 3 C's, like letter C. So it's being curious first, you know, really learn about things and have the courage to pursue. I would say the last C is carry it forward. So what I'm really blessed to have the opportunity for so many mentors, a coach, or sponsor to really help me, and sisters around me that always, you know, we know a lot of women leadership really help each other out, is that how I personally every single year really help to carry this forward to next generation and forward. So I think it's also critically important. So the one thing, if I summarize this for my journey, is this is one of the quote that came, you know, really given to me from my mentor, and he said, "Get comfortable with being uncomfortable." So which I have all the time. Any difficult moment, I say, actually, this is the greatest moment because I'm learning. So
Right. I'm scared to death, but that's okay. I'm out of my comfort zone, but that's a good thing, right? It's sometimes hard to intellectually process that, Angie, but you're absolutely right. Susan, I'll loop back to you. What have you been taught by some of your career defining moments?
Well, Angie and I went to the same school, so I have 3 C's too, but the third one is a bit different. I start with the curious one, and again, embracing that whole approach of lifelong learning. I'm never done. You know, it's not as if there isn't something new I can't figure out, learn how to do, etc. And then have the courage to act on that. The last one I would say is confidence. And we've touched on this in some of the other sessions, but actually being in those uncomfortable places has inspired and instilled more confidence that, wow, you know, I didn't know how to do that, but I did that really well. And it just sets you up for, you don't know what those experiences prepare you for next, but invariably it's preparation for something that happens next. So those are my 3 C's.
That's wonderful. It's kind of like unconscious competence. You really are good at it. You just don't know it yet because you haven't done it. Hunter, I see you pop on. If I could just go back to Robin for one last answer, and then we'll close out. Robin, what have your career moments taught you?
Yeah, I think it's more about, not letting those personal insecurities of not being good enough or not knowing why you have a seat at the table. You do have a seat at that table and you deserve to be there. I think taking that to that next step is because some of those doors were open for me. It's being authentic and very intentional to open doors for others that you see who have high potential. I kind of take that into some learnings that you can give others, is that path that you're on today may not always be the path that you're going to be on. It's not always going to be a straight line. So recognizing when that opportunity is an open door, reflecting on your concerns as to why you're scared to walk through that unknown door, but walk through it. Be curious, ask questions, challenge yourself as to why you do deserve to be at that table, and take the risk. You can always fall back to your prior type of role that you feel comfortable in, but you'll never move forward until you take that risk and move forward.
Wow, wise words from 4 amazing women. A virtual round of applause to each of you. Thank you for letting me direct this discussion today. I learned a lot too. Hunter, thank you very much.
Hey, Renee, great job. Leslie, Susan, Angie, really, really appreciate it. Robin, awesome. Thanks so much. Hey, next up, we have our final panel session, Driving Cultural Change into 2021 and Beyond. I'd like to invite our panelists, Jennifer Hartsock, VP and CIO of Baker Hughes, Jerry Martin-Flickinger, Janet Sherlock, CIO of Ralph Lauren, and Angela Yoakum, the EVP and CDO and Technical Officer at Novant Health. Good to see you, Janet.
How's it going, Hunter?
Janet's going great. How are you?
Fantastic.
Thank you for making it and being here. Really, truly appreciate it. When this topic comes to mind, you want to set a little context on Baker Hughes for folks that might not know the scale that you operate on, Jen, and your kind of opening thoughts regarding the topic here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Baker Hughes is an energy technology company. So we provide equipment and services into energy, and a lot of that is into oil and gas. Over the last 3+ years of our existence, we have been created out of a pretty significant merger of like-minded equals, which was a large segment of what was the General Electric portfolio and then what was Baker Hughes. So last year we had $24 billion of revenue, 67,000 employees operating in 120 countries. So it's a pretty large organization to try and influence with a lot of different constituents and needs.
So the scale that you're working on is massive, right? Across all of those countries. When you think about culture and the changing workforce and having an inclusive, diverse culture, what comes to mind?
Well, I think, candidly, the 120 countries is absolutely really key in that conversation, but it's not the only contributing factor to how you think about diversity, equity, inclusion. How do you really use our roles as technology leaders to influence that? You have to understand certainly the cultural differences of the different organizations around the world, the different countries we work in, understand the different cultural needs of the different types of work that we perform across the company. And it is really important, of course, looking at the United States, we have our own set of diversity understandings that have to be considered as well. And of course, as we look at the last several months and looking into 2021 and beyond, it has changed. And our roles as technology leaders are probably even more critical now than they were a year or 5 years ago. And I think that most of us would agree that just deploying technology is not what makes our lives interesting. It's the adoption and the outcome that technology is intended to provide. And for that, we have to be change leaders. We have to be talking about the cultural factors. We have to help our colleagues across the executive team think about how our changes are going to be received into each and every one of those demographics for all of the constituents, employees, communities that we serve, our shareholders, our customers. And that means that we have to think absolutely like business leaders that happen to have responsibility for technology.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Jen. We'll circle back to you in a minute. Hey, Janet, I know you have a broader message regarding the impact of diversity and inclusion in our tech industry. A little context of those for folks who don't know how big Ralph Lauren is and how you're pivoting digitally.
I do have a larger message, but the pivot digitally has been largely, well, we've all been in digital transformations, I think, not just in the retail industry, but across the board. But particularly with COVID, we've had to shift a lot of things, whether it's in our retail stores. I'm looking at Jerry, who can't sell a virtual cup of coffee, but in retail, we've had virtual appointments and lots of digital contact with the end consumers, and a lot of different omni-channel kind of capabilities. But beyond that, Hunter, even things like going to the showrooms, the way wholesale partners buy from lines like Ralph Lauren or other lines is they go to a showroom and they touch and they feel the product and they make their purchases from that experience. So we've had to create virtual showrooms. At a company like Ralph Lauren, as well as other companies, we've been doing 3D product development for a while, but we would still bring in physical samples for our design teams and merchants to approve. They would look at them and touch them and feel them. And we now do product approvals through 3D virtual samples. So I believe that the changes that we have incurred in 2020 will continue through 21 and beyond. And what I just hope is that culturally, this culture of ingenuity, of shifting paradigms and not doing everything the way we've been doing it, will continue to progress for all of our organizations and our businesses and our industries. And I'm just so thrilled to be in the technology space, getting to drive that change.
Excellent. And you have a broader mission or idea now regarding a new initiative that you're taking part of.
I do. So thank you. I'll take the moment to bring up that initiative. And thanks, Jen, for bringing up diversity and inclusion. I've been working since the murder of George Floyd, and we've all been focused on diversity and inclusion, I believe, but there's just been such a spotlight since this summer. So I'm working with about a dozen technology executives and leaders, some from Novant Health, where Angela is from, as well as from Estée Lauder and Deloitte and Boeing. And so we got together and we said, we really do need to make a difference in the technology space. We all of our organizations, I'm sure, are working on how we can increase diversity and inclusion. But if you ever look at the statistics of a technology organization, they're different than what you will see in the rest of the organization. We still lag further behind in representation for women in just the managerial and individual contributor roles, and especially in the executive roles. We also lag behind Latinx and Black and African American further than a lot of our other peer professions. So we've created a group called the Tech Pact, which if anybody is interested in agreeing, it's going to be a pledge, a personal pledge that you will take to support diversity and inclusion. And the vision of the Tech Pact is to create a world where everyone with a passion for technology has the ability to succeed. So there's going to be lots of programs, lots of partnerships with groups like Empower and Year Up and other groups that support diversity and inclusion. We believe this is going to spread like wildfire throughout the technology community. I would love it. I'll be seeking for everyone to be agreeing to the Tech Pact pledge. And if you want the information on it, we're going to launch on October 29th. In the meantime, please reach out to me, janet.sherlock@ralphlauren.com, and I will make certain to make sure that you get the information about the Tech Pact, which we're launching, and I'm so excited about it. And thank you for allowing me to speak about it.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Janet. Angela, good to see you. It's been a while.
Hey, great to see you.
Yeah, you've been through quite a bit with the digital pivot and had quite a bit of success in really kind of racing into that digital space. Any updates in terms of what you're working on next? What's next?
Well, okay, so just a little bit of background for people who may not know what Novant Health is. We are a super regional integrated healthcare system based in the southeastern United States. So we have about 30,000 team members and 700 locations, and we directly provide healthcare to people. So we have hospitals, we have clinics, physician centers, outpatient centers, that sort of thing. So healthcare itself as an industry is under quite a bit of change and has been for a while. It's a highly fragmented industry. It's rapidly evolving due to changes in the regulatory landscape, changes in the payer community, certainly consumer appetites, as has affected, of course, all of our industries. And my company recognized this a few years back and hired me and gave me the remit to do a pretty significant transformation of the underlying digital capability to bring us into where we think healthcare is going. And so when you think about some of the things that have been discussed thus far, and I'm so glad we're having this conversation about culture and cultural change. It's particularly impactful and important inside of healthcare organizations, because not only do we have we historically had so much to do, at least within Novant Health, to bring our technology capability up to where it can make a significant difference in patient access to care and quality of care, but also the industry itself is shifting around us. So you have to very intentionally manage your culture. So it's just been a thrilling activity. And throughout COVID, we of course did what everyone else did. We already had a strong digital health capability. So we had up to 10, 15,000. I think we had one of our days, we may have had over 20,000 virtual visits in one day. So we have tens of thousands of visits on a daily basis throughout the course of the crisis, the shutdown. I think we're averaging about 2,000 a day today. So that's about 1,900 more than we would typically average a day before the COVID crisis. So it's nice to see people being willing to access care through unconventional means. And of course, we enhance this through devices that have advanced sensor capability that allow us to give very detailed exam remotely, which has been very helpful as well in adoption. And we do things like, let's see, well, you know what? I could go for much longer than anyone would care to listen, but things like a significant AI investment that are doing some truly remarkable work in stroke care and heart failure and breast cancer and all the rest of it. So if and when you have a panel about those sorts of advanced tech things, I would love to tell you a little bit more. And drones, don't forget the drones.
Drone, wow. So a little bit more though, Angela, on the responsibility regarding culture, learning, and research as part of your senior C-suite duties.
Well, so Misty Fragan, she's our VP of Culture, Learning, and Research. And she and her team have been extraordinarily helpful, not just in helping us, as I mentioned before, be very intentional about the way we manage the change and keeping everyone engaged and invested in shifting and making more contemporary the ways in which we operate our digital products and services organization, but also in the longer term, preparing for that shift that we talked about a minute ago. It is inevitable, and the change and the cultural change required is going to span many years, not just the next few months of continued transformation. So it's a good foundational capability, I believe, to have in place if you are in an industry that is rapidly changing.
So it's actually a part of your role, though, right? This new expanded responsibility.
This has been part of my role for years. So yes, I've been with the company just under 3 years, and so I hired Misty to run this part probably Great. 6 months in, wasn't it? I think. Yeah.
Love it. Excellent. Thanks, Hazel. Hey, Jerry, back over to you. You were early on one of a conference call with me back in March, and you said, hey, Hunter, realize what we're going through here on a global level. This is not a sprint. It's more like a marathon. I might even say it's more like an Ironman. Getting more and more extended, right? How long this is going to play out. When you think of leading massive cultural change in a global pandemic and in a global organization, what's that like for you?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. Janet said you can't have coffee virtually, but we can get you almost to your coffee pretty virtually. So I'm betting everyone's doing that now. You're ordering your coffee through the app, you're doing curbside, you're doing delivery. So without a doubt, I mean, from a business perspective, our channels saturation around digitally enabled orders is huge. You know, it's happened, you know, very quickly in a growth, and I can't really say more than that. But I think we're all experiencing that. We're experiencing that in all parts of our life. I want to shift though for a second and talk a little bit about the culture at Starbucks and what this pandemic has felt like inside. I think most people know that Starbucks is grounded in the sense of community coffee house culture. You know, you come to a Starbucks, it's always been the place to sit and visit with people, to grab your coffee and be there on a weekend or have a meeting, whatever. And the same is true of the culture in the corporate headquarters, which is in Seattle in a really old historic building. In fact, it was probably one of the most shocking things to me when I joined Starbucks 5 years ago, because really when they say there's a corporate building, there is a corporate building. And that's where most people who are in any kind of corporate function sit, in Seattle, in this historic building. The idea of having video conference meetings 5 years ago was pretty novel. And I would say was not a cultural trend that the actual corporate way of work made easy. It's the kind of culture where people really mean meeting at the coffee machine. You actually meet at coffee tables inside the corporate building. You have coffee tastings to start nearly every meaningful meeting that you have. So I would have coffee all day long, probably a tasting at least 4 or 5 or 6 times a day. Talking about the coffee is much like talking about wine. You talk about the taste and the smell, and so you can only imagine when all of a sudden one day, literally, we walk into an all hands meeting and we say we want everyone to go work from home now, starting now, like not a month from now, not a week from now, right now. And we did that earlier than most other businesses. As you know, Washington State was very early on the entire US pandemic experience. And so we really did overnight go home. And the number of phone calls I got from executives throughout the company really worried was quite insightful. People were really worried, like, how is this going to work? How can we possibly function? And as we all know, as technologists, of course we could function. We had a Teams license. We were totally ready to have everyone on Teams, and people didn't really believe it. And then lo and behold, the next day we just start working remote. And as we went through those first few weeks, people were truly amazed at how quickly the culture shifted. It wasn't slow and tedious. It was literally overnight. So much so that when we did our first pulse survey shortly after we all started working from home, most of our partners, which is what our employees are called, immediately responded with they really liked working remote and they could see doing that for a very long period of time. We recently announced that we will not be going back into our Seattle headquarters until next October. So an entire year from now. And we're not worried about getting work done. We want to make sure we refit the building so that it's prepared for a new way of working when we get back, because now that everyone is loving this new digital mode of connecting, we even have coffee tastings. We still have coffee tastings. We just do them a little differently now. But I don't know. So, you know, I always thought culture took a long time to shift. And I think I've been excited that we've watched this pandemic. A silver lining is that a culture that believed they really couldn't maintain community and connection virtually has just discovered they can. So I probably talked too long about that, but boy, it's been really amazing to feel it.
Well, hey, Jared, perhaps one of the more innovative companies in the past few decades, Starbucks, when you think about accelerators and innovation and inhibitors, where do you fall out on that topic at Starbucks?
Well, we've done a lot of pretty innovative technology and continue to. And I think one of the things that has helped us is we spent several years really rebuilding our architectural foundation so that when we got to the point of needing to accelerate, like we've done in the last 9 months or so, we were able to do things like unlock new channels, delivery, curbside without rebuilding anything. We literally put a little bit of icing on a cake and leveraged all of the foundational infrastructure and technologies we'd built. So, I mean, I think everyone on this call, we're all technologists and we're all in leadership of technology. We know how important good architecture is and architecting for the future, not to respond to your needs today. And it does feel like it's been a bit of a case study for when we did that and we took our time to do that the right way. We have been able to go faster.
Excellent. Thank you. You know, Jen, over to you. When you think about this whole pandemic that we're in and working from home and so forth, it puts a lot of challenges on diversity and inclusion. But there are also some opportunities. What's the upside and the downside?
Yeah, and I think that, and I appreciate really all the comments of the fellow panelists, which I think we were all nodding for a reason, because there's so much commonality even across all these different industries that we represent, the different geographies that we work in. And Hunter, I think that you're right. There's both an opportunity to level the playing field with remote work. There's also an opportunity for us to potentially leave some folks behind. So I think from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, we have to be every bit as intentional as we are right now. And Jerry, I really appreciated you sharing the Starbucks story about really taking another year to refit the work environment. One of the things that I felt like was a big enabler to diversity, equity, and inclusion this year is that we put everybody remotely. Now, I have a globally diverse team. We're all over the world. So there was a bit of a headquarters versus perspective in our culture, where if you weren't near a center of gravity, sometimes maybe your voice didn't get heard quite as clearly as if you were. So with everyone moving remotely, we kind of took away the advantage factor of FaceTime, hallway time, et cetera. So we have to be a little bit more intentional. Now, if you were outside of that center of gravity, this felt like a fantastic opportunity to step up and be seen differently. So I hope we don't lose that. That's one of the things that we're trying to retain, is that how do we make sure we have the really intentional inclusion? The other part that I would say that we've had to be a little bit more thoughtful of is, as a global team, we're heavily reliant on global travel to bring people together for ideation and innovation. Now, it's episodic, so we bring people together, they work for a little bit, and then they go back to their corners of the world. But when you're trying to do that across 16 time zones, and you're trying to make sure that people who are in an apartment with 2 or 3 generations of family, and it's the middle of their night, really thinking through how do we make sure that we don't create undue burden on those with different life circumstances or different, geographies has also been a part of our journey. So we've had to find some creative ways, and candidly, we don't have it all figured out yet, but we'll change shifts. Like, sometimes we make it really convenient for those that are in the US. Sometimes it's really convenient for those in India or Malaysia. And we try to do that in a way that way we're accommodating people working from home in different scenarios. We've also found that in some cases we were willing to open up an office for people a little sooner, because it really was more effective and more productive for them to be in a physical office and maybe away from some of the chaos that some of our home lives looks like right now. So we've had to work through a lot of different scenarios. And I think that just like non-COVID times, it really is a function of being incredibly intentional about making sure that you're creating the right opportunity and then giving people the right opportunity to show up and be successful. So for us, we've actually seen some really great progress. And one of the things that I think that we're trying to really grasp a hold of is, how do we not lose this ground on creating this level playing field for people to more equitably compete for really great work and great opportunities for promotion and advancement.
Thanks, John. Great job. Hey, Janet, over to you. When you think about the technology and driving cultural change and how we'll work today into the future, what comes to mind?
I think it's a lot of the things that we've spoken about, which has, oops, my screen was doing something strange there, which, you know, Jen brought up a really good point. There's some really positive outcomes from the COVID situation for organizations. And this is not just at Ralph Lauren or at Baker Hughes, or it's been at every company, which is there's the corporate phenomenon, and when you're not a corporate, and there's the corporate phenomenon. This has made it so that really minimizes that. So I love that there's a few things that are going to support recruiting. If you don't need to actually be in the office any longer, does that open up where you recruit people from? This whole equalization of the corporate centers of gravity, as Jen put it. I think that culturally we're all going to be more nimble than we were before. I think that we're the paradigms of we had to do things this way have been broken this year. And the other thing as well that's been interesting is that I think our partners have just realized we all had to snap to it. When COVID hit in technology, like I had a very similar situation as Jerry. Fortunately for me, I had architecture in place that I was poised for curbside. We hadn't delivered it yet. It wasn't high on our priority list, but I had the architecture ready for that. So I guess, you know, what we showed our partners is when the pressure's on, we can really deliver. So I think that there's maybe an expectation that we're going to be a little bit more nimble and be able to deliver a little bit more quickly than maybe in the past. So I think that there's a lot of changes for our business partners, as well as expectations for us in technology that we're going to see continue into 2021 and beyond.
Love it. Thanks, Janet. You know, we got about 1 minute to wrap up here. Just a quick comment. Exciting time to be in technologist, and probably one of the most interesting times, right? I always say it's the best time, but it always seems like the next day is the best day. But very challenging. But do you love what you're doing? Any comment? Jerry, Jen, Jerry?
Oh my gosh, it's an amazing time. I think in addition to everything else we're dealing with, this time when diversity and inclusion is forefront for all of us and all of our companies is going to make the future a very different place in a very, very good way.
Awesome.
If I were to add, yeah, like for us, we have this nice, phrase that we say, which is the who is our how. We're entirely dependent on really great intellectual capability and diverse perspectives around the world. And what better time to take the who of technology and bring it to really incredibly impactful how. So yeah, I'm with you, Hunter. Today is a great day to be in tech.
Love it. Janet?
I've been inspired all day today. Have you noticed how many people spoke just from the heart about and being very transparent about confidence and feeling like you belonged? I think that there is an exposure to our true selves and an openness that I think that as women we bring to the table. But I believe this year, 2020, has just opened up this environment that really helps us to be empathetic, more patient, and more kind to each other. So I thank you for this forum for us to speak as women. And I believe that that is going to help carry us through to all being better corporate citizens and better partners in our work environments.
Hey, thank you, Janet. Well said. Brilliant. Angela, final word.
I think 2020 has really separated the wheat from the chaff. The folks that you've heard on this panel and on all of the prior panels have described how the diversity of thought and the inclusive culture that they've cultivated and the good forward-thinking technology decisions and investments that they've made up to this point allowed them to thrive during very difficult times, unanticipatable times that we've encountered in 2020. So I think this sort of event has been extraordinary for all of us to share stories and to celebrate the good work done here so far.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. Thanks, Jerry and Jen and Janet, for all of your engagement and support over the years and sharing your experience, right? You guys are all really world-class rock stars. You know, it is the most challenging time ever, right, in our careers. But you're right, Angela, I think, and Janet and Jen and Jerry, the folks that we had show up today on the agenda and the attendees, they were all really leaning in, and you're living that kind of that champion moment, right? We're what, 8-9 months into this, could be another year or two as it plays out, the long tail. And that kind of vision and leadership and courage and authenticity and leading authentically with humility and the balance, you know, of a servant leadership is all part of a kind of a style, a leadership style that you've all developed over the years, decades you've been in this, but in the last 9 months, it really pushed it to the edge, right? So big thanks to you all. Thanks so much, everyone. Be safe, and looking forward to connecting soon. Take care.